So you just film some new fitness or gym content and you get it into your editor and it looks like this.
Brother, ugh.
I see tons of good editing out there, good sound design, good stylized shoots. Everything looks amazing. The number one deficiency that I see in a lot of people is your color grades. I'm talking to you, Sony users. What's going on, everybody? This is gonna be a new series that I'm starting, all related to the ins and outs of creating amazing fitness content. All right, number one issue that I see, especially for a lot of Sony users, I'm a Sony user myself, so I know the struggle, my guys. Your videos are very green. You need to learn a couple techniques in order to not post stuff with aliens in it. So I have a super crazy node tree right here. Don't really worry about this. I'm super extra with my grades a lot of times. You don't necessarily need all of this stuff. I can break down this node tree in the future if you guys want to see why all of these things are where they are and what purpose they have. But for now, just stick to having a color space transform in the beginning. Typically the first, put whatever color space and gamma you're using in your camera. If you're Canon, it'd be like C-Log. I'm using Sony, so I have Sony S-Log3 here and Sony S-Gamma3.Cine. I'm converting those to DaVinci Wide Gamut and DaVinci Intermediate because they're a larger color space. So any changes that you make are a little bit more granular. The next thing that you're gonna wanna do, don't worry about these two back here, is the last node is going to be another color space transform that'll be converting that DaVinci Wide Gamut and DaVinci Intermediate into Rec 709 for different purposes. Obviously, the output color space and the output gamma are going to be a little bit different, but for social media purposes, putting them to both to Rec 709 is fine. And then basically you are going to color grade in between those two nodes that you have there to get your look. What I like to do first is to get the contrast where it's supposed to be, because contrast also affects perceived saturation. So an image like this is going to look a lot less saturated than an image like this. After you've set your contrast, sometimes I do like to set the saturation as well. So the way that I like to do the saturation is I like to go over to this RGB mixer here in its own node. It's got to be just saturation by itself. Each of these channels, it's going to have one color that's a little bit higher than the rest. That's the channel that it is. So basically you're just going to push these all the way up. It's going to look like this when you first do it. That's fine. What you're going to do after doing this in the RGB mixer is you're going to go over to, I believe it's called key. Yeah. And then you're going to go to key output. So essentially think of this saturation almost like an overlay. So you're going to be dialing back the opacity of the saturation to a spot that you like the best. Sometimes if I'm getting real crazy, 40%. Sometimes it's way too much though. So usually somewhere around 20 to 25% is usually the spot that I prefer to use. So what's wrong with this image? Obviously, everything's super green. First rule of business is you're gonna go to your color wheels here. It's the third one at the bottom. And you're gonna start with your offset wheel. Now, typically with this offset, I don't like grabbing the little dot in the middle here, because a lot of times when you're pushing to a specific direction, you might be adding a little bit of another color in there that you don't want. So instead of doing that, drag on these bottom areas down here. So obviously what did we say was wrong with the image first? There's too much green in it. You can tell by the vector scope down here. When you pump some green into the image, it's shifting all of the skin tones towards the yellow. So in order to counteract that and get it closer towards our skin tone line, we are going to add some magenta to the whole image. So you can just click on this little green area right here and drag towards the left. Left will be magenta, right is to add green. And look, even just that one little change right here, that's done so much for our image to make it look more natural. And a lot of times I swear when I do this, I'm just like, brother, ugh. Like I couldn't believe that I used to post stuff like this and I thought it was so amazing. But it's not until you learn how to do little tweaks like this, your eyes start to get opened to the fact that, oh, these things weren't as awesome as I thought they were, which just helps you level up in the future. The next thing we're gonna wanna do is to fix our blacks. You'll notice if I zoom in on this black area over here, adding magenta to the whole image. It's fixed the skin tones more, so they're a little bit closer towards where they should be, but it's also added a lot of magenta, bluishness into our black areas. Easy fix for this is you're going to click over here to our log wheels, and you're gonna go to the shadow here. And a lot of times with the magenta bluish area, there's gonna be a decent amount of blue in there too. So a lot of times just pumping some yellow into that region over there will really kind of help to neutralize that a bit. Look at the difference between this and this. Look at the black areas. See how blue that was? And now we got it back towards black. You can sell people on a lot of crazy looks a lot of times if the blacks are just where they're supposed to be. And then from here, obviously, there's still a lot of yellow in the skin tones. So from at this point, it would be a good idea to do some hue shifting to get it more back towards the normal area. So I typically like using these DCTLs. They're by Mononode. It is a paid service though, so I will not do that this time, just so that you guys can get the most out of this lesson here. So typically when I do these hue versus hues like this, I like to make everything super crazy like this so that you can get an idea of what's being selected, because you want this change to be very granular and very subtle so that when you make that adjustment, it looks more real. And I kind of like somewhere around there. You see over here, it's a little bit more on the skin tone line, or a little bit closer to it, I should say. From here, this is pretty much all I would say you would really need to do with this image for social media. Now, if we were gonna go over the top with it to just really sell everything a little bit more, next thing I would do is I would go to the sharpen edges. I'm not a huge fan of adding sharpness to the whole image because it can make it look very crappy really quickly. So a lot of times I would suggest using the sharpen edges effect under the effects up here. You just add it onto a node and you can kind of see what it does to the face right here. It's just adding a bit of sharpness to specific regions. And what you can do to really fix it, to dial it in the way that you want, is if you go to display edges. And the whole goal with this is you want it to be kind of subtle. You know, you don't want it to be like in your face. And look at you can really tell what it does to the face. Look at, we're getting some detail back in the eyes, around the edges of the ears. But yeah, I would say this is pretty much it. Hopefully this helps you out. You can try this on next time that you jump into a color grade. Step 1, mess with the offset, and then go to your log and fix all of the black areas, and you're on your way to have some really sick color grades from that point. So I hope this inspires you to ditch the LUTs and learn some color grading techniques that you can use for the rest of your career. I hope you like this video, and I'll see you in the next one.